Every year, we lose people who shaped the world we grew up watching. And this year has already taken more than its share of legends. Actors who defined our childhoods, musicians who wrote the songs stuck in our heads for decades, athletes who gave us moments we still talk about, gone within days of each other. It's the kind of loss that reminds you how much of your own life got wrapped up in theirs. Here are some of the most recent celebrity deaths in 2026. Baseball pitcher Mickey Lolich died February 4th, 2026 at a care facility in Sterling Heights, Michigan at the age of 85. A left-handed pitcher for the Detroit Tigers through the 1960s and 70s, he set a career strikeout record for a lefty and became an all-star 3 times over. 3 complete games in the 1968 World Series turned him into a Tigers legend, and that performance against the St. Louis Cardinals earned him the Series MVP award. Hot rodding pioneer Ed Iskandarian died February 4th, 2026 in Los Angeles at the age of 104. Racing on California's dry lake beds back in the 1930s lit the spark. And from there, he built an entire career designing and fabricating aftermarket parts for hot rods. Fellow racers called him the Cam Father for his game-changing camshaft designs, and the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America later inducted him. Before any of that, he served with the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II. Football legend Sonny Jurgensen died February 6, 2026 in Naples, Florida at 91 years old. A Hall of Fame quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Redskins, he's remembered as one of the greatest passers in NFL history. His second act came behind a microphone, calling Washington games on radio and television for decades after he retired from playing. Three Doors Down frontman Brad Arnold died February 7, 2026 after a fight with kidney cancer at just 47 years old. He was only 15 when he wrote the band's breakout hit Kryptonite, and he went on to co-write other favorites like Here Without You and When I'm Gone. Fans remember him just as much for his openness about his Christian faith, something he talked about often at concerts and in interviews. Cake guitarist Greg Brown died February 7, 2026, following a brief illness. As the band's founding guitarist, he played on their first 2 albums, including the double platinum Fashion Nugget. Writing the 1996 hit The Distance was his, and his guitar work also shows up on tracks like Jolene and Rock and Roll Lifestyle. Television bassist Fred Smith died February 5, 2026 at 77 years old. His melodic bass lines anchored the influential punk band's stripped-down sound, heard clearly on albums like their iconic debut, Marquee Moon. Baseball speedster Terrence Gore died February 6, 2026, from complications after surgery, at only 34 years old. 3 teams, 3 championships. Gore won a World Series with the Kansas City Royals, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Atlanta Braves. He never built a career on hitting. He built one on speed, coming in as a pinch runner who specialized in stealing bases and crossing home plate. Former NFL cornerback Barry Wilburn died February 6, 2026 in a house fire in Memphis, Tennessee at the age of 62. Playing cornerback for the Washington Redskins in the 1980s, his 2 interceptions in Super Bowl 22 helped beat the Denver Broncos. What came after his NFL years was just as notable. A run in the Canadian Football League that included a Grey Cup win with the BC Lions, making him one of the rare players to hold both a Super Bowl ring and a Grey Cup. Football coach Ray Handley died February 5, 2026, at 81 years old. Handley took over as head coach of the New York Giants for 2 seasons in the 1990s, right after their Super Bowl 25 win, and the team's fortunes cooled during his tenure. His stronger legacy came earlier, as the Giants' offensive backfield coach from 1984 to 1990. Detroit Lions defensive end Tracy Scroggins died February 9, 2026, at 56 years old. All 10 of his NFL seasons were spent with the Lions, and he wrapped up his career with 60 and a half sacks, among the highest totals in franchise history. Teammates and fans remember him as a popular player, and by every account, simply a good person. French clown and educator Philippe Gaulier died February 9, 2026, from complications of a long infection at the age of 82. Generations of performers learned how to be funny at the school he founded, and that teaching legacy included students who became stars in their own right. Among them, Sacha Baron Cohen, Emma Thompson, and Helena Bonham Carter. The Pogues' longtime drummer, Andrew Ranken, died February 10, 2026, at 72 years old. His playing shows up on classic albums like Rum's Sodomy and the Lash, and If I Should Fall from Grace with God. And bandmates and fans alike remember him as the collaborator who kept the band's energetic sound grounded, the heartbeat behind the music. Actor James Van Der Beek died February 11, 2026, after fighting colorectal cancer at 48 years old. Starring as Dawson Leary on Dawson's Creek made him an icon of millennial television, one of the defining teen shows of the 90s and 2000s. His screen career didn't stop there either, with memorable turns in Varsity Blues and Don't Trust the Bitch in Apartment 23. Actor Bud Cort died February 11, 2026, in Connecticut, from complications of pneumonia after a long illness at 77 years old. Playing Harold in the cult classic black comedy Harold and Maude defined his iconoclastic career. And that was just one entry on a resume that included MASH, Brewster McCloud, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou, and Dogma. Chuck Norris died March 19, 2026, at the age of 86. Decades of martial arts action defined his screen career, and Walker, Texas Ranger turned him into a household name, the role most fans still associate with him above everything else he did on screen. March 23, 2026 took actress Valerie Perrine, who died at 82 from complications of Parkinson's disease. Playing Eve Teschmacher opposite Christopher Reeve in Superman brought her to a whole new audience, and her performance in Lenny opposite Dustin Hoffman remains one of the defining dramatic roles of her career. Back to the Future actor Matt Clark died March 15, 2026, at 89, after complications following back surgery. A familiar face in film for decades, his career included dozens of character roles that made him one of Hollywood's most dependable supporting actors. Anthony Stewart Head died June 1, 2026, from complications of pneumonia at the age of 72. Fans of Buffy the Vampire Slayer knew him as Rupert Giles, the Watcher whose steady presence anchored the show for years. And that role alone cemented his place in television history. Air Force veteran and actor Ronnie Schell died June 12, 2026, from natural causes at 94 years old. Best known for playing Duke Slater on Gomer Pyle, USMC, his comic timing made him a familiar and welcome presence on television for decades. Comedy legend Catherine O'Hara died January 30th, 2026, at the age of 71. Millions of families still watch her every holiday season as Kate McAllister in Home Alone. And a whole new generation came to know her decades later as Moira Rose on Schitt's Creek, a role that turned her into an unlikely icon all over again. Grey's Anatomy star Eric Dane died February 19, 2026, at 53, following a battle with ALS. Playing Dr. Mark Sloan made him one of the most recognizable faces on network television for years, and his openness about his diagnosis in the time before his death brought new attention to the disease itself. Robert Carradine died February 23, 2026, at 71, after battling bipolar disorder for nearly 2 decades. Generations of comedy fans know him best as Louis Skolnick in Revenge of the Nerds, a role that turned him into one of the defining faces of 1980s teen comedy. And his career stretched across decades of film work beyond it. Lauren Chapin died February 24, 2026, at 80, following a battle with cancer. Television audiences in the 1950s knew her as Kathy Kitten Anderson on Father Knows Best, a role that made her one of the most recognized child stars of her era. Ghostbusters actress Jennifer Runyon died March 6, 2026, at 65, after a 6-month battle with cancer. Her role in the original 1984 film introduced her to audiences worldwide, and she went on to appear in other favorites like A Very Brady Christmas and Up the Creek. The Lion King co-director Roger Allers died January 17, 2026, following a short illness at the age of 76. His work behind the camera helped shape one of the most beloved animated films ever made, and that legacy continues to reach new audiences every time the film finds its way back onto a screen. Music legend Neil Sedaka died February 27, 2026, at the age of 86. Hit after hit carried his name through the late 1950s and beyond, and songs like Breaking Up Is Hard to Do and Calendar Girl kept his voice on the radio for generations of listeners, long after they were first recorded. Sanford & Son actor Demond Wilson died January 30th, 2026, in Palm Springs, California, at 79 years old. Playing Lamont Sanford opposite Red Fox made the sitcom one of the most popular shows of the 1970s, and Wilson's chemistry with his on-screen father became the heart of the series for 6 seasons. Singer Peabo Bryson died June 2nd, 2026, after suffering a stroke at the age of 75. Duets like A Whole New World and Beauty and the Beast carried his voice into animated classics that an entire generation grew up singing along to. And his career spanned decades of chart-topping ballads before that. DeVay Chase died June 16, 2026, from complications of bacterial meningitis and a blood infection, at just 35 years old. Horror fans remember her as Samara in The Ring, a role that turned her into one of the genre's most unsettling faces, while a younger audience knew her voice from Lilo and Stitch, where she brought Lilo to life. Music executive Clive Davis died June 22, 2026, from an age-related illness at 94 years old. Careers like Whitney Houston's, Alicia Keys, and Janis Joplin's were shaped in part by his ear for talent. And for more than 50 years, his name sat behind some of the biggest voices the industry ever produced. Pulp Fiction actor Stephen Hibbert died March 2, 2026, after suffering a heart attack at the age of 68. A small but memorable part in one of the most influential films of the 1990s was enough to make his face stick with audiences long after the credits rolled, and he kept working steadily in the decades that followed. Patrick Muldoon died April 19, 2026, from a heart attack at 57 years old. Soap opera fans knew him from Days of Our Lives, and that following carried over into primetime when he joined the cast of Melrose Place, with an earlier role on Saved by the Bell, rounding out a career built on staying power in front of the camera. Game of Thrones actor Michael Patrick died April 7, 2026, at the age of 35, following a 3-year battle with motor neuron disease. His wife confirmed that he passed peacefully, surrounded by family, after 10 days in the hospital. And fans of the show remembered him as part of a cast that helped turn the series into a global phenomenon. Taken together, these are the faces and voices that shaped decades of movies, music, and television. And losing this many of them in the span of a single year is the kind of thing that's hard to fully process all at once. Some of these names built entire childhoods, others soundtracked them, and a few simply showed up on screen so often they started to feel like family. Whatever role they played in your life, growing up watching them, listening to them, or laughing along with them, that connection doesn't disappear just because they did. It's worth taking a moment to remember them, not just for what they gave us on screen, but for the peace of our own lives that's tied up in theirs.